The media frame Ghislaine Maxwell as Jeffrey Epstein's madam. They say that she was grooming victims for him. That framing of Ghislaine ignores both her biggest skill set and her family history. That's not to say that she didn't recruit and abuse victims. She did, but so did lots of people. Lex Warner gave Jeffrey direct access to the entire Victoria's Secret. Why is she in every picture? Why was she kept around? To understand Ghislaine's role in Jeffrey's operation, you need to understand where she came from. Robert Maxwell is best known, at least in the UK, for his Daily Mirror pension scandal. It was this that was the catalyst for the 1995 Pensions Act. But the Mirror was not the only publication that Robert Maxwell owned. Robert Maxwell did not simply build a publishing empire that conveniently happened to have intelligence links. The evidence shows that in 1951, MI6 helped Robert Maxwell buy a publisher called Butterworth Springer. Butterworth Springer, which he renamed to Pergamon Press, published scientific journals. He also acquired Macmillan and McGraw-Hill, which are school book publishers in the United States, on top of his media group, which included The Mirror and other papers. This man controlled a bottleneck on what scientific research got published, what American school children learned as foundational truth, and how public political discourse was shaped in Britain for nearly 2 decades. This is narrative control. This is an intelligence asset well versed in narrative control, shaping public opinion, manufacturing consent. These guys were buying up the pieces of the information environment that shape what you think you know. He never got caught. He died unexpectedly and then it all came out. That's the household that Ghislaine grew up in. Her father served as a Labour MP for 6 years in the 60s. He mixed socially and is pictured frequently with people like Queen Elizabeth, King Charles, Margaret Thatcher, Mother Teresa, we'll get to that, the Bushes and the Trumps. So what about Ghislaine? Born in 1961, she was the youngest of 9 children. Her father named his yacht the Lady Ghislaine, and she grew up in a 53-room mansion in Oxford. Throughout her childhood, lavish parties were thrown around her, with politicians and celebrities and media agents frequenting the Maxwell house. This next piece is alleged rumour. Take it with a grain of salt because this is my source, but it's interesting. Allegedly, when she was a schoolgirl, she would recruit her young school friends and introduce them to her father. Allegedly, but like very much in line with everything else but happening behaviourally. Until he died, Ghislaine spent her early career working with her father at both Pergamon Press and the Mirror Group. Ghislaine was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein in the late 1980s. This article behind me is interesting. It was written by Vicky Ward in 2021 for Rolling Stone. Back in 2002, long before Epstein was arrested, Vicky had sat down with Stephen Hoffenberg. Stephen Hoffenberg is in prison for Ponzi scheme fraud. But back in the 80s, he worked at Tower Financial with Jeffrey Epstein. Hoffenberg is an interesting person to listen to, even though he is a fraudster, because he admits to Vicky Ward that he was so transfixed by Epstein that he started paying the rent for Epstein's offices. If you've been wondering why Lex Warner gave Jeffrey power of attorney, it's interesting to hear somebody else speak about the effect that he had on them. He says these two were introduced by her father. They were first photographed together the same month that Robert Maxwell died, November 1991. If Hoffenberg is correct and Robert Maxwell introduced them, it suggests that Epstein was already involved in Maxwell's intelligence operations long before he died in 1991. Either way, she entered this relationship with connections to the British deep state through her father. She had a whole lifetime of experience working in narrative control in media and publishing operations. She had a Rolodex full of elite contacts from these childhood parties. Lord knows what she's seen or what she absorbed, but she certainly knew how her father used institutional power as intelligence. Straight after her father's death, she moves to New York. So he dies in November 1991. By the end of December 1991, staff at Jeffrey's house are referring to her as the lady of the house. And she made it very clear that she occupied a central role in Epstein's affairs. Robert Maxwell spent decades building information control infrastructure. He absolutely worked with the British intelligence. He's believed to have worked with Mossad, and he's rumoured to have also worked with the Soviets. The continuity there is not that he was a triple agent, it's that all of these intelligence agencies need the same infrastructure to control you, not fight with each other. She grew up in that infrastructure, watching her father and his connections, learning how institutions and networks and media control function together. As soon as he dies, she moves in with Epstein, and within 3 years, prosecutors are alleging that she is enabling sexual exploitation. That does not sound like someone employed by Epstein to find women and groom them. That sounds like someone who is central to the operation. In 2012, Ghislaine set up her own ocean conservation charity. Let me read you what its stated mission was. Create a global ocean community focused on the 64% of the oceans that lie outside any country's jurisdictions, international waters, also called the high seas. Wait, sorry, what's your stated mission? Create a global ocean community focused on the high seas, the unclaimed parts of international waters. Right. Influence Watch reported on this. Look how weird this revenue is. You have $200,000 of expenses and you've only generated $6,000. This is so weird. Look, the Terramar Project was funded by loans from Ghislaine. Some years it had revenues as low as $500, but expenses ranging into the hundreds of thousands. Ghislaine spoke at the UN in 2013 and 2014, representing Terramar. This is after Epstein was arrested. At the same time, 2013, she is listed as a partner at the Clinton Global Initiative of Sustainable Oceans. This is 4 years after she was subpoenaed. She also had a speaking slot at the Council for Foreign Relations in 2014. And she was endorsed by National Geographic. And she had a TED Talk. Terramar did no charity work, but it did spend hundreds of thousands on consultancy fees, legal fees, accounting, publicity. There's no documented distribution of grants. There's no conservation projects. If you look at the accounts, especially the amount of money that was put into public relations, this was a laundering shop. That 64% of territory that lies outside any country's jurisdiction, what is that? That's not random. That's the Arctic. What she means when she talks about the underutilised areas of the ocean are the resources and the shipping lanes that are becoming available in the Arctic because of ice melting. When she spoke at the UN in 2014 on behalf of Terramar, she said that their goal was to create a social network around oceans with global outreach that would empower the representatives in the United Nations to take the hard decisions that they need to do to make new laws for the sustainability of the oceans. This image is from when she spoke at the Arctic Circle conference in 2013. That speech focused on the oceans feeding 16% of the global population, the possibilities of, and I quote her verbatim, exploiting what we have, economic values. She said, "We need to eat and make money, and I believe we can have a sustainable ocean and a sustainable Arctic and make money." Explicitly linking Arctic governance to economic exploitation. Under the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, no single country can own this territory. For Maxwell, that was both a problem and an opportunity that she could solve. This is frontier capitalism, colonisation in its finest form, and there she is, flogging the narrative, setting up think tanks to launder propaganda through high-worth networks. That's her role. This Terramar thing happened to pop up during the exact window where governments were writing high sea legislation. This is them positioning for political and economic control of the Arctic, pretending to be conserving the oceans. Terramar did absolutely nothing for the oceans, but it did position Maxwell inside the institutional architecture just at the right moment as the rules were being written around who could exploit the Arctic. Throughout the evidence, that is the role that she plays. She's a spin doctor, a manipulator, a good liar. Whether it was convincing young girls that Jeffrey really did love them, or whether it was convincing politicians that she was reliable with their venture capital. Her role has always been to invert reality in twisted ways that serve her own agenda. It's quite important that we don't flatten that into, oh, she was just a madam for Geoffrey. Or worse, the faux feminism saying, oh, she's the only woman that got arrested. She's the scapegoat. Poor Ghislaine. No. Not poor Ghislaine. She is not a madam. She's an information warfare specialist.